So last night I get this itch, and I get this itch that I wanted to play around with a different Linux distro. Now, most of you guys know I am a Gentoo guy. I'll probably always be forever a Gentoo guy, but every now and then, even myself, I get this itch to play around with something different, right? Something unique. And that got me thinking, you know, I have NixOS installed here on my system. I have it installed alongside Gentoo. And one of the things that I don't really do in NixOS is I don't really spend a lot of time in it, right? Sure, I'll log into NixOS and I'll log in, I'll do a couple configuration stuff, I'll change a couple of things, and I may stay logged in for a day, but after a day or two, I relog and I'm right back in Gentoo, right? So I wanted to challenge myself and I wanted to see if I could live inside of NixOS for 30 days. Now, I'm not getting rid of my Gentoo install if any of you guys are thinking that. But I do want to, I want to experience something new. And the reason I really want to do this is because in traditional Linux distros, the way that you configure software is a lot different than the way that you configure software here on Nix. Nix OS is a different beast. It really is. Everything is written in configuration files or configuration.nix file. You got Home Manager, which manages your dot files. You got Flakes. I mean, you got all this different, these different tools available to you. But in order to take advantage of these tools, you have to actually write these configuration files in the Nix programming language. I don't know the Nix programming language. I know some of it. I understand some of it. I understand the basics, but I don't know all of it. And here lately, the one thing I've been really wanting to do is I've been wanting to create, right? And I have been wanting to code. I don't know. I get this inkling every once in a while, and I'm just like full-fledged, like I want to learn, right? So I'm going to challenge myself, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to configure the hell out of NixOS, okay? I'm not going to switch over to my Gentoo install. I'm just going to stay in NixOS. And what I'm going to do in today's video is I'm going to show you everything that I have done since last night. Now, it's only been one night. It hasn't been a whole hell of a lot of things, but there are a couple of things, and maybe you guys can kind of get an idea of what I'm actually doing. All right, so let's go ahead and flip over to the desktop, and I'll show you guys all my configurations, and we'll begin. All right, so the very first thing that you might see is you may see a XFCE4 wallpaper. You would be correct. So when I installed NixOS last night, I had to actually reinstall from my previous install because for some reason my NVIDIA card driver just would not work. I don't know why. Something was screwed up. I must have done something, but regardless, I got all that taken care of. But you may see this wallpaper, and that's because when I used the GUI install, I just selected XFCE4 as my, as my desktop environment, just so that way I could kind of start getting to work, right? Like that was my main goal last night, was I wanted to get it installed, have something pre-configured, just so I can kind of start getting some stuff working properly. The next thing you might see is I'm in DWM. You would be correct again. DWM. DWM is a different beast here on NixOS. You do not install DWM the way that you're used to installing DWM. You don't make install, you don't do any of that crap, which is kind of different, but it's kind of cool at the same time. I'll show you guys everything. I'll show you all of that stuff. So let me go ahead and open up a terminal here, okay? Next thing you'll see is, yes, I'm running ZSH. Yes, I'm running Kitty. I've got nerd fonts installed. Everything that you guys are probably used to me seeing, or used to seeing when you watch my type of videos, right? Nothing different. All right. So, first off, I do have Home Manager installed. I do have Flakes installed. Okay, I use both of those, and I will kind of go through what some of those things are. But first, let's look at my configuration.nix file, and then I'll step you through some of its config, and then I'll show you all of it. Okay, so first thing is my configuration.nix. Now, this config package and this imports hardware configuration.nix, standard stuff. You'll see this probably in almost every configuration.nix file that you look at, right? Next stuff is just grub, right? I'm just installing grub. However, until we get to this entry right here. This entry, this, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, this 9 lines of code, it took me 2 hours to figure out last night. 2 hours. It was mind-boggling. So what all of this does, the only thing that this does is it tells my NixOS grub, the bootloader, it tells it to put a manual entry, name it Gentoo, and then when I click Gentoo, it will go to my Gentoo's grub. I hope that makes sense. So it's a grub on top of another grub. Now, the reason I think it's like that is because I have 2 EFI partitions. If I did not have the 2 EFI partitions, I don't think I would have had to do that. But because I do have the 2 EFI partitions, I have one for Gentoo and one for NixOS. That's just the way that it worked out. This was a pain in the ass to get working. I'm not gonna lie. I had to do a lot of research in order to figure this out. But yeah, that's all it does, is it allows me to boot into Gentoo. Now, you might ask, well, why didn't I just use the Gentoo's version of grub? Well, if you know anything about NixOS, you would know that they do something called generations, right? Like every time you update your system, what happens is the previous entry gets entered into grub, and then the newer entry becomes the main entry that you're going to use, right? Because you want to use the newer system. When you use another grub from another distro, sometimes those entries do not get populated correctly. Okay, and I think that was one of the main things that was happening to me last night when trying to figure out my video card situation. Was I think my configuration.nix file, I think it was correct, but the grub entry wasn't updating properly in my my Gentoo's grub, right? So for that reason, what I thought I would do is I was like, you know what? I was like, I'll just use NixOS's version of grub, right? So that way the generation files get populated correctly, and then I'll be able to just switch into Gentoo and everything else. Okay, so long story short, that's all of this code does right here. But this did take me quite a long time to figure out. All right, so right here, I'm just setting my host name, pretty standard. We're using network manager, standard. Time zone, standard. Locale, standard. Okay, we're enabling X11, Xorg, standard. Right here, XFCE desktop environment. I'm probably going to disable XFCE, but right now it's standard. We're just doing some key map type of stuff. That's pretty standard. Cups, standard. Hardware, so we got sound, so I'm not using Pulse Audio. I'm using Pipewire. Okay, that's all standard stuff. Right here for users, of course, my username is Chris. And then I'm setting my shell to ZSH. I'm also setting some extra groups, so network manager, wheel, plug dev, and video. Okay, so all of that's pretty standard. Installing ZSH, installing my NVIDIA card driver, and then right here we're setting some variables for my NVIDIA card. So we're setting mode setting enabled to true, setting the open, which is something kind of new, set that to false, and then NVIDIA settings, so that way I have that program as well, setting that to true. Setting some environment variables, so for stuff for Flakes, nerd fonts, I like my nerd fonts, and then we got the we got some XDG desktop portal type of stuff kind of going on right here. This is all pretty standard stuff. Till we get right here. So this is another one of those unique things, right? Installing DWM. So like I said, you cannot install DWM the way that you previously installed DWM. You cannot make install. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there might be some way to get the dependencies, the X11 dependencies, but I couldn't really figure it out. So this is the way that people have recommended to do it. Now, you can actually install patches this way too, which is really cool, and that's something that I am going to be working on. So this is just a pretty basic DWM. Nothing, I don't have a single patch installed, but it works, right? So what this does is it starts the DWM service, it enables it, so it installs it. All right, and then this packaged override attributes. This source equals DWM. So the way that you install, or the way that you configure DWM here on NixOS is you have to take this source variable and you have to point it to your DWM directory, okay? From there, what you do is you configure config.def.h like you typically would with a standard DWM config. Then you copy that config.def.h file to config.h. That's it. You do not make install. That is it. All right. And then the NixOS package manager, when you do a rebuild, it will handle installing, like your, your new stuff. Okay. So I haven't gotten into patches yet, but I have some bookmarks saved. To kind of explain to me how to do it. Next thing is we're doing this experimental features. So this is for flakes, and then I got the optimized store. So I still gotta add quite a few stuff to the optimization section. All right, we're installing Firefox. Again, standard stuff. Allowing unfree software. Yep. And then right here, you can see the software that I have installed. Now, if you're new to NixOS, there's a couple of different ways to install software. There's like 3 or 4 different ways. But pretty much you have a system level, okay? And you can use the system level for all of the software you want to install. That's no big deal. Or you can kind of split it up. You can do it system level, or you can do it user level. And I'll talk a little bit about that once we get into my home manager configuration. But pretty much, so system level, I got Git, Discord, GCC, Pabu control, just the standard kind of software that I typically use. Okay, that's all it is. And then down here, still got a lot of work I need to do down here. That's pretty much it of my configuration.nix file. I am running the unstable branch if anyone wants to know, okay? I got that working as well. All right, so let's go ahead and look into my flake. So my flake is the standard flake that I've always used since I've kind of messed around with NixOS. All right, so my flake manages home manager, and it manages my configuration.nix file. Next up, we will talk about my home.nix file. So you can see my home.nix, so you can see my home username, Chris. And I'm pretty sure there's a way also to define all of your home stuff and your usernames in this home.nix file. I haven't done it yet, of course. And these module imports, so with these module imports, all I'm saying right here is, hey, I've made individual .nix files for, what Home Manager actually does is it manages your .dot files, all right? So instead of having, like on a traditional Linux distro, you'll have a .config, and then you'll have some folder. So let's say .config kitty/config, right? Whatever kitty's config is. Here on Nix is a little bit different. You can do it like that, though. You can do it the traditional way. Or you can use something called Home Manager, and Home Manager allows you to write individual .nix files to manage those configuration files. I hope that makes sense, and I'll show you guys some examples here in a little bit. But all I'm saying is, hey, I have a kitty.nix file. That's going to be all my kitty stuff, right? I have a westterm.nix file. That's going to be all my westterm configuration stuff. I have an sh.nix file. That's all my, that's all my shell configuration stuff, okay? And then I'm enabling PyCom. Got to fix that still. And then we got, I just got some some user programs that I would use as the user. Now, I do need to move GCC and Rust Analyzer over to configuration.nix. But we got, we got NH, I got Python, I got Kitty, I got Alacrity, I got LazyGet, Just, XSFE, Flameshot, HTOP, the standard type of stuff, right? We got Rofi, just stuff that I can configure. Typically, what you want to do, and this is just from what I've kind of seen, is anything that you can write a configuration file for, or anything that you may want to configure by yourself, stick that program in your home manager.nix file. Okay? Everything else that maybe is like system wide and you really don't need to configure it, right? Like you don't need to configure GCC, you don't need to configure make, you don't need to configure Rust Analyzer. That type of stuff is already kind of configured for you. Stick that stuff in your configuration.nix file. Everything else, stick in your home.nix file. All right, so the next stuff, so you can see this home.file, and this says home manager is pretty good at managing .files. And you can manage plain files through this home.file. I haven't played around too much with home manager, but that's just a consensus that I have I've kind of thought of, that the way that they want you to use home manager if you're going to use it, okay? And then you can also set, of course, you can set your session variables and your environmental paths and all that type of crap. Also, home manager manages itself, which is kind of cool. All right, so you don't have to, once you install home manager, you don't have to like do anything weird with it. It will handle itself. It will update itself and all of that stuff. Okay, so let's check out my users apps emulators. I'll show you some of these some of these individual program.nix files to iterate what I was talking about with how it is your new .dot file, right? So if we look at my kitty, so you'll see here's my kitty file. Nothing fancy, right? I install it, I enable it, I have some settings, and you may say, you may even look at this and see and be like, man, these look like the same settings that's on the kitty.configuration file, right? Like a standard kitty.configuration file. You'll be right, you'll be correct. It's the same thing. The only difference is that the way that it's written, this is written in the Nix programming language, right? Rather than the way that I guess Kitty does their configuration. All right, so all of this stuff, I mean, it's pretty basic stuff. All right, so you just have to use, if you're using Home Manager, you do have to use the Nix programming language. All right, but all I'm doing is I'm setting audio bell. I hate that thing, so I always turn it off. Set the font family to JetBrains Mono, bold font, JetBrains Mono, and then font size to 14, just so I don't hurt my eyes. Okay, so that's pretty basic, and then I will show you my, let me show you my shell, my sh.nix file. This one's a little bit bigger, but it's all the same, right? It's all written in the Nix programming language, so all I'm doing right here is I'm making a variable. I'm calling my alias. I'm setting some aliases, right? And then we install some shells. So I got ZSH going. So I have, I enable it. I got auto suggestions. I tell it, hey, my dot directory is going to be .config ZSH. Enable completions, because I want completion enables. And then this init.x or this init extra, this is pretty much telling it, hey, run this program, or yeah, run this program whenever we start the shell, right? So if I start up Kitty or whatever, or ZSH, it's going to run neofetch, right? That's all it does. And then, of course, we got fish shell, because I do like fish. And then we got some other stuff. Now, this is kind of weird. I have other... When I started doing this, I had other programs that was kind of... They kind of intertwined together, right? Like, neofetch is supposed to be with your shell stuff, right? Because neofetch just works with your shell. Same thing with bats, same thing with, you know, probably FCF and LSD and BAT and FD and all that type of stuff. So that's why I kind of put those programs like right here. Now, I didn't have to do that. I could have put those in configuration.nix. I could have put those directly in my home.nix file as well. It doesn't matter. In fact, even putting them right here, these will not override the ones that's in home.nix, as far as I can tell. Okay, but everything works. And then right here, we got some. So I'm saying, hey, this home.shell aliases, I want to use my aliases and throw it in there. So now in every single shell that I have, whatever aliases I define at the top of here will be in that shell, right? And then, of course, we got the Starship prompt right here. And then I got some dev type of stuff at the very bottom here. We got Zoxide that I haven't set up yet, directory environment, and just some of that type of stuff, okay? So, I guess we can kind of look at DWM, and then I will show you guys how to update some of this stuff, right? So let's go to my DWM, and then we config.def.h, right? So this is my DWM. Like I said, it's really basic, really simple right now. However, I'm going to change it. So I'm just running Kitty, and we got D menu, and then I've set a couple keybinds. Pretty basic stuff. So if I wanted to change some stuff with DWM here in NixOS, this is exactly how I would do it. First, I would remove this config.h file, okay? And then I would go in here to config.def.h, okay? And let's just say I made a change, all right? I made a change. I don't know what change to make right now, but let's pretend here I make a change, all right? So I make a change, and then, so what I would do is just copy config.def.h, and then I would config.h. That's it. And then what I would want to do in order to get those changes to work, right, is I would just do sudo nixos rebuild switch with the flake right there, okay, and then I would update the system. That's all I would do. And it would you know, it would do my newest DWM kind of configuration. Now, that's with my configuration.nix file. How does Home Manager work, right? So Home Manager kind of works the same exact way. Because I have a flake with Home Manager, because I have that flake.nix file and it manages Home Manager and all of that stuff. I can throw it in that flake as well, but it's pretty much the same command. So Home Manager, switch, flake, and now it will it'll download any package that I throw in home.nix, and it'll work. So let me think of something I can install super fast just to kind of show you. All right, I have thought of a program that I don't have on my system here, and that we could go ahead and install. Nitrogen, right? We all know nitrogen. So if I want to install nitrogen, via Home Manager. Type it right there, right and quit, and then Home Manager switch flake, and now you can see that it's going to query quay and all that stuff, and then it's going to find it, it's going to download it, boom, nitrogen. And now if I go up here, there's nitrogen. Super easy, right? So that has been a quick and dirty look at my my NixOS setup. Now, like I did say, I will be configuring the hell out of this, and hopefully by the time at the end of this 30-day challenge or whatever you want to call it, hopefully I have a better understanding of the NixOS ecosystem, and I have a better understanding of the Nix programming language, because it's very fascinating. I want to work with Flakes a little bit more, and because another reason that and I failed to mention this in the intro, that I'm really wanting to learn this stuff is because you can use Flakes on other programming languages as well. Like you can use Nix Flakes. I've seen people use Nix Flakes with Python. I've seen them use it with Go. So I kind of want to get into this habit of trying to learn the Flakes and learn all these different things. That way, when when I'm building programs in Go, or if I'm building programs in Rust and C and all that stuff, that I can maybe take advantage of Flakes and just have a good understanding of like what the hell I'm actually doing. All right. So if you guys learned something, or if you didn't, please give me a thumbs up. It does help out the channel. And of course, if you guys have any questions, comments, suggestions, or if you just want to make fun of some of my configuration.nix, the way I did some things, or my home.nix, if you guys want to laugh at it, go ahead. But until next time, I want you guys to take care, be safe, and peace. Thanks for watching.